Today, for day number 1, you are going to need the usual wall space and a chair, and the only equipment that you're going to need is a yoga block or something similar. Welcome to day number 1. We are going to start today by working around our kneecap. And one of the reasons being that we have 3 main compartments in our knee. We have one that is towards the inside of our knee, one that is towards the outside, and the one that is in the front of our knee, right below our kneecap. So when we have arthritis in our knees or any kind of degeneration, a lot of the time it affects all 3 of these compartments. But it tends to affect the one on the inside the most and the one on the front the most. It doesn't tend to affect the one on the outside just because of how we're built. So we're going to focus a lot more of our time towards the inside of the knee in here and the front of our knee and making sure that that's moving the way that we want it. So one of the unique things about our kneecap is that it is one of only 2 bones in our entire body that floats, meaning it's not attached by ligaments to anything else. It is actually floating in place, and it's actually just inside the muscle belly of your quadriceps, which is a big muscle on the front of your thigh. So if you straighten your leg out right in front of you and let all the muscles on your thigh relax, your kneecap is actually designed to move around. It's designed to float. It's designed to wiggle. And when you bend your knee, it kind of falls into a little bit of a groove. And that groove that your kneecap sits in is the part where we can get some kind of arthritis. So what we're going to do today is we are simply going to wiggle around our kneecap. One of the things that does is it helps to regulate how much tension is in our quadriceps. It helps them to behave the way that we want, the muscles in our thigh. And it also lubricates up the joint a little bit. So most joints get a lot of the lube that's inside of them from the soft tissues such as the capsules and muscles around the knee. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to work around and try to stretch all those little things in there, and it will help to lube that up and should make things feel a little bit better around our knee and a little bit in the front of our thigh as well. So all you've got to do is scoot towards the front of your chair, have one leg bent and the other leg completely straight, and try to have it completely relaxed if you can. If you're holding your leg up or you have to pull yourself forward, what will happen is you'll tense these muscles up and your kneecap's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to be rigidly stuck in place. So you've got to try to let everything relax, and I'd recommend even grabbing your thigh, jiggling it a little bit, try to make sure it's nice and relaxed, and then we're going to just find our kneecap first. So mine is right here. It's between this finger and this finger. Just, you can see it going back and forth in there. You can see it push down. You can see it push up. That's what it's supposed to do. I know it's a little weird, but your kneecap is actually supposed to move around rather freely. So one of the things that we're going to do today, so we're going to take our kneecap and we are just going to explore. So rather than me give you specific direction, I want you to just take your kneecap and I want you to kind of, almost as if you were trying to work around to all the different times on a clock. So if I'm looking straight down on my knee here, I'd be pushing towards 12 o'clock if I'm pushing towards my foot, 1 o'clock towards the inside, 3 o'clock this way, 6 o'clock that way, 9 o'clock that way, and noon again that way. So all I want you to do is to spend about 30 seconds, take your kneecap and gently slide it in all these different directions. We're not pushing straight back. We are pushing that way. We're sliding down our shin, up our thigh, towards the outside of our knee, towards the inside of our knee. And I just want you to jiggle it around. So start that now. Just take your kneecap, kind of explore. And what you'll probably figure out is that there are some directions that are a little bit tender, and some directions that have a little more resistance, and others that feel, for the most part, pretty loose and pretty easy. It's not going to be equal in every direction. Most people, it's going to be a little tighter in some directions. But I just want you to take your kneecap and just jiggle it around. You can grab onto it with thumbs, with finger and thumb. You can grab onto it with all your fingers at the same time. I just want you to grab it, move it all around. So try not to press your kneecap backwards, as in straight down towards the floor. It just will cause some compression, won't necessarily make any problems for you, it just won't be comfortable, and won't necessarily give us a lot of benefit. We want to slide it around in all the other directions that we can, nice and gently. Okay, we've spent a little bit of time on that kneecap, so let's try the same thing on the other side. Try to straighten your other leg. Get it as relaxed as you can. Try to get all those muscles kind of pliable and nice and relaxed. And then we're just going to lean forward and we're going to do the same thing on the other one. We're going to try to just move it around, maybe 30 to 60 seconds, kind of exploring all over the place. If it turns out that you've had a surgery on your knee, like you've had it scoped to clean up a meniscus tear or degeneration, there's a good chance that it's much stiffer on that side than the other side. So just Know that I've had surgery on this knee, and so this kneecap is usually just a little less pliable, and that's entirely normal. That's a good reason to work on it as well. So just start moving that around in there, whatever way you're most comfortable. And be gentle as always, and don't press straight back down towards the ground. You want it to act as if it's sliding up and down the front of your leg. Good. So we will very likely do a little bit of work on our kneecaps, making sure that they're moving a lot almost every single day. It tends to be that the more mobile we can make our kneecaps, generally speaking, the better we're going to feel. So we'll do a little bit of that work every day. And just so you know, anytime you get particularly achy knees, this is something that you can actually do to try to get a little bit of relief out of them, is to do just that. Sit down for a couple of minutes, take your kneecaps and slowly work them around in all different directions. For a lot of people, it'll take a lot of the pressure off of their knees. So the next thing that we're going to do is going to be along the same lines of trying to make sure that the muscles in the front of our thigh are doing the work that they're supposed to do. So these are called your quadriceps because there's 4 different parts of them. And what they do is they straighten your leg out and they lift your leg up. And so they participate in a lot of natural movements, just like walking, running, up and down stairs, squatting, stooping, those sorts of things. But what we're going to do today is we're going to isolate it down to a slightly smaller movement, which is called a leg lift. So in your chair, you can scoot backwards and you can lean back just a little bit. And what we're going to do is have one leg planted so that we're using it for support, and the other leg is going to be straight out in front of us. You can either point your toes or you can pull them up towards your nose. Just pick one, whichever one you want. And then all we're going to do is we're going to straighten our leg, and then we're going to lift up until our thighs are parallel with each other or higher if you feel like doing it. Then we're going to go straight back down again and then relax. So all we're going to do is 10 repetitions on one side, then we're going to switch to the other, take a short break, and do the whole thing one more time. Okay? So if you want, you can do it very forward and upright, but you might be limited by your flexibility that way. So for most people, a little bit of a backwards lean is entirely fine. Okay? So let's do 10 repetitions of that right now, following along with me. So I'm going to do most of this with my toes pointed. It's a little easier if you've ever had any kind of nerve tension in your leg from sciatica or anything of that point. Usually pointing your toes is going to be a little bit easier that way. And make sure that you really try to straighten your leg as much as you can. That'll get the front of your legs doing the work. You'll probably also notice as we go, the front of your hip is going to feel like it's doing a lot of work. It's because your hip flexors are also a big part of this movement. And I think I've only got 1 rep left. So we'll just do that one more. And then we'll bend that leg. Got us a little tired there. We're going to do the same thing to the other side. So we're just going to sit back a little bit, straighten. I'm going to point those toes just like that. And then we're just going to lift straight up. We're going to do 10 reps. So if you have different hips side to side, as far as you've just had some injuries or surgeries or replacements, you'll probably notice this is a little harder on the hip that doesn't work as well, which is great. We get the added benefit of working on our hip while we work on our knees. Good. So there's 10 on that side. Let's shake them out a little bit. You can try to relax them. We're going to switch right back and do the same thing on the first side again. This time, we're just going to do 5. Okay? So get into the same position, back with the first leg, point toes or pull your toes up, and we're going to do 5 repetitions lifting up towards the ceiling, starting now. And try to get it nice and high if you feel like you can. Lots of you will be flexible enough to get it up there pretty high. Some of us won't. That's entirely fine. We have 5 on the first side. Let's go back for the final set. We're going to do 5 on the second side. Same thing, try to aim toes up towards ceiling this time. Let's do 5 more reps. Good. Now we've got 5 in on that side, and we've got a good amount of work in for our hips and the front of our thighs. For the next exercise, we are going to use a yoga block. So if you don't have a yoga block, you can actually do this one with just your hands as well. It's just a little easier with a yoga block. So this is what a yoga block looks like. It is made of some dense foam, but you can squeeze into it a little bit. So you can use something like this, or if you have a yoga block, which I'd prefer you have, you can grab it right now. So what we're going to do is we are going to squeeze in like this. So for most people, their wrists, when they put their knuckles together side by side, are going to be very similar width. So if you don't have a yoga block, you can do the same thing here just by making 2 little fists and squeezing them into each other. But if you have arthritis in your hands and that doesn't feel good, you can also do something where we push in like this. It's just going to be a little more complicated, that's all. But I'm going to show you with a yoga block. So all I'm going to do is we're going to have feet together, making something that looks like a square top to bottom. I'm going to scoot forward to the front of my chair. I'm going to sit in a nice upright but relaxed posture. I'm going to have the second widest part here. So this would be the widest. This is the second widest. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze in, which you're going to see my legs kind of activate and pinch a little bit, and we're going to hold. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 10 seconds, and we're going to do that 3 times. Okay? So get into that position now. Get the yoga block, just get it kind of wedged into place, or your fists or your hands. And then we're going to squeeze for 10 seconds starting now. There's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax. If that's tight in the groin muscles, you can let these fall out to the side for a second. So the muscles that are up here, our groin muscles, are called our adductors because they control where our knee goes side to side, one of the sets of muscles that does that. So it's important for these to be strong for a lot of different reasons, for hip health and for knee health. Okay, let's get back into the exact same position. Do the same thing again. We're going to get that yoga block or whatever you're using into the right position, and then we're going to squeeze in and hold for 10 seconds starting now. So squeeze, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax. Good. So this time, we're going to take a shorter break, and we're going to do the same thing. I want you to squeeze with about 50% of your capacity for the first part, and then squeeze as hard as you can for the second part. As long as you feel safe to do so, I want you to make sure you're squeezing nice and hard on that yoga block just to get a really good activation of these muscles. Okay? So get it back into position again. We're going to do 10 more seconds, and start now. Squeeze, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Now squeeze really hard. 4, 3, 2, 1, and then relax again. So for most people, that's going to be a lot of activity up here in the upper part of their groin and a little bit in the front of their hips. If it's uncomfortable on the inside of your knees and we end up doing this again, you're welcome to use some really thick pillows or maybe stack a couple pillows together. We just want to make sure that it's wide enough that it holds your knees apart, because pushing them all the way in together like this, for certain types of hip arthritis, it won't be very comfortable. So we just want to make sure if we can that we don't have to have our knees dipping all the way in, preferably something about that wide. For the last 2 exercises that we're going to do today, we're going to do them against a wall, standing up. The next exercise that we're going to do is designed to help our hamstrings. So our hamstrings are on the back of our thigh and they cross the back of our knee. So what our hamstrings do in isolation is they just take our knee and they just bend it straight up. They pull our heel towards our butt. But they also cross our hip joint. So one of the things that we do to load up our hamstrings is something called a deadlift or a hip hinge. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do the entry point into that kind of movement. And so what I want you to do is you're going to stand maybe about 9 inches away from the wall. Or, depending on your size, one of the easiest things you can do is just use your own shoe length. You can put a foot on the ground and then stand in parallel to that with the other foot right in front of it, and you'll find your distance away from the wall to be about there. So all we're going to do is we're going to have our hands on our hips, and we are going to try to keep our feet planted flat on the ground, our knees ever so slightly bent, and we're just going to slowly reach our butt back to the wall until it touches. So the first few times, it's going to feel like, how far is this wall away? I feel like I'm going to fall back. So if you need to, one of the things you can do is you can lower yourself against the wall, you can bend forward, and then come forward and up. But I'd like it if you were comfortable enough that you can just bend straight forward like this, and then slowly scoot your butt back until it just touches the wall, and then come straight up again. So if you feel like you're a little too far, feel free to scoot in by an inch or so. Then you can do the same thing. Being right beside the wall, you're going to be too close, you're going to hit it really quickly. I want you to make sure you have to get nice and deep in there before you really have to touch the wall. The goal is not to support your weight on the wall and lean into it. The goal is just to touch your butt to the wall and come straight back up again. Okay? So let's put hands on hips, and we're going to have feet just outside of shoulder width, or a little narrower if you want. Point your toes just slightly out by 10 or 15 degrees, and we are going to bend at the knees and the hips, reach our butt straight back until it touches the wall, hold for a second, and then come back up again. Let's do that 9 more times, just slowly. And if you feel like your hamstrings, the back of your legs, start to fatigue, feel free to use your hands running down the front of your thighs so that you can use them to crawl back up if you need to. Make sure you keep your chest up nice and proud while we do this. It'll put a lot more tension into your hamstrings, but that's what we're going for. We want this to be hamstring exercise. Good. So we've done about 10 now. If you need to, you can take a little break, bring your feet back together, maybe kind of prance around a little bit, let them relax, try to let everything shake out a little bit. And by the time you've taken a short little rest, we're going to go right back into doing 10 more reps. So if you felt like you were a little too close to the wall where these were kind of easy, take a small step forward, like an inch, if that. And if you felt like it was a little too hard, like you had to fall back to the wall every time, then all I want you to do is to move in just a little bit. So the position you should end up in is going to look like what we call the shortstop position from baseball. Because you're going to be here and you're just going to be looking forward. Your hands will come down just to about your knees and your butt goes back. It's not a squat where we're coming straight down like this. Your butt is going back and your hands can come down the front. Okay? So we're going to get into position again. We're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to do 10 more repetitions. Let's start that now. You should be about the right distance from the wall where you get a little bit of tension onto your hamstrings, but your feet don't start to come off the ground, your toes don't start to come off the ground. They can still maintain their contact with the ground. Let's do one more. And then come right back up again. Good. Hopefully your hamstrings feel like they got a little bit of work, and they probably got a good stretch out of this as well. The very last thing that we're going to do is going to be for our calves. So our hamstrings are attached to the back of our thigh, and they cross our knee in the back. Our calves are attached to the back of our lower leg, the back of our shin, and they also cross our knee in the back. One of the unique things about the knee is it doesn't have very much going on just in the joint itself. Most of the muscles and the other things that cross the joint and control where it goes are located in our shin, our hip, or our thigh. And so that ends up being what we work on in order to make our knees nice and healthy. So the last exercise that we're going to be doing, we are going to be facing the wall, and we're going to be doing this stretch. So for most people, being about shoulder width apart with their support on the wall and about arm's length is right. So from here, you can have both of your feet back underneath you, and you can step forward with one leg to your toes being on the wall and your heel being on the floor here. So from this position, all you've got to do is bend your knee and lean forward a little bit and start to take your knee towards the wall. So depending on how high up the wall your toes are, it's going to depend on just how far your knee is going to go forward. But most people, they're going to get quite a stretch far before they get to the wall if their toes are up the wall at all. And what we're looking for is a stretch somewhere from the back of your ankle all the way up to the back of your knee, which is where most people are going to get it. So from here, we just drive forward a little bit. And once you get to that position, I just want you to hang out here, take a few breaths, and relax. What we should see if we look straight down is that your knee is right over top of your foot or in line with your foot. It could be behind it, but we don't want to go inside and we don't want to go outside. We just want it to be straight over top of your foot. So take one more breath, and then as you let it out, push yourself back away from the wall, and we're going to switch legs. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to take our toes and put them on the wall, put our heel on the floor, then we're just going to lean forward a little bit, and we're going to bend our knee and start to bring it towards the wall. And we should feel a little bit of a stretch in the back of our calves. So again, we're going to hang out here. We should have our knee, for the most part, over in line with our foot, where our thigh bone and our shin bone and our foot are all in a straight line. We don't want them contorted relative to each other if possible. Good. So take one more breath in, and then as you let it out, push yourself away from the wall. And I'd encourage you to kind of do some circles with your ankles just to try to loosen them off a little bit. And that is it. We are done for day number 1. On day number 2 to 5, we're going to repeat some of today's exercises while introducing a few new ones as we go. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow.